History can change in an instant with the pull of a trigger. When someone famous, whether it's a president, a pop star, a notorious criminal, or even the assassin himself, is taken out, it can send shockwaves across a nation or even the whole world. These moments are so impactful that people who live through them will always remember exactly where they were and what they were doing when they first heard the news. Sometimes these assassinations are politically motivated, other times driven by revenge or greed. And then there are times when the reason behind the murder is just completely unclear. What most of these famous assassinations have in common is that they've all changed the course of history in some way, and their moments we'll never forget. So today, we're diving into some of the guns that ended the lives of famous figures, along with the assassins and their weapons, many of which have left people questioning and even creating conspiracy theories to figure out what really happened. Starting off with one of the most famous assassinations in history is the tragic death of Abraham Lincoln, carried out by John Wilkes Booth. The Derringer pistol, a popular one-shot defense weapon in the United States during the 1800s, was the weapon used to end Lincoln's life. Lincoln, the 16th President of the U.S., led the country through the American Civil War and made the historic decision to end slavery through his Emancipation Proclamation. His leadership during the war resulted in the Union Army decimating the South, its economy, and its way of life. Naturally, such decisions sparked strong hatred from many Confederate sympathizers. John Wilkes Booth was one such individual. Coming from a renowned acting family, Booth was an outspoken supporter of the Southern cause and vehemently opposed Lincoln's policies, especially his stance on slavery. On the evening of April 14, 1865, Booth shot Lincoln in the head with a .44 caliber Henry Derringer pistol while the president was watching a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. The bullet, weighing almost an ounce, lodged in the back of Lincoln's head. Tragically, President Lincoln passed away the next morning, leaving behind a nation in mourning. Next up is the assassination of John F. Kennedy by Lee Harvey Oswald, a tragic event that shocked the world. The weapon used in this assassination was the Carcano Model 91-3 Italian infantry rifle, a rifle that's now infamous because of its connection to this historical moment. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, served from 1961 until his death in 1963. Though his presidency was brief, it was marked by significant moments, including the Cuban Missile Crisis, a nuclear standoff with the Soviet Union, and accomplishments like the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Kennedy also initiated the Alliance for Progress and made history as the first Roman Catholic and the youngest person ever elected president of the U.S. Tragically, his life was cut short on November 22, 1963, while he was riding in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Lee Harvey Oswald was accused of firing the fatal shots from a sixth-floor window of a school book depository. Oswald allegedly used a mail-order Carcano Model 91-3 rifle to fire 3 shots, 2 of which struck Kennedy, one in the throat and another in his head. The headshot was fatal, and this assassination ignited decades of conspiracy theories that still persist even more than 55 years later. Another infamous assassination involving a gun took place when Lee Harvey Oswald, the accused assassin of President Kennedy, was killed by Jack Ruby. Ruby used a Colt Cobra revolver, a firearm known for its use in a variety of calibers, including .38 Special, .32 Colt New Police, and .22 LR, among others. The assassination of Oswald by Ruby sparked more conspiracy theories and questions, further complicating the already controversial event. Many have long debated whether Oswald acted alone in Kennedy's assassination, with theories linking various groups like the Soviet Union, the Mafia, and even Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson to the plot. Unfortunately, no one could ever fully question Oswald about his involvement or possible accomplices. That's because just a day after his arrest, Oswald was shot while being transferred to a more secure facility. As television cameras rolled and a crowd of police officers and spectators watched, Jack Ruby, a local nightclub owner, made his way through the crowd and shot Oswald at point-blank range in the basement of the Dallas Police Headquarters using his concealed Colt Cobra revolver. Oswald was rushed to the same hospital where Kennedy had been declared dead just 2 days earlier, but he died shortly after arrival. This event left the nation with more questions and fueled even more theories about who was really behind the killing of President Kennedy. Jack Ruby himself died in prison 4 years later. Moving on, we have the assassination of President William McKinley by Leon Czolgosz, who used a .32 caliber Iver Johnson safety automatic revolver. The Iver Johnson Company, known for making firearms, also had a reputation for bicycles and motorcycles. William McKinley was the 25th President of the United States and was re-elected in 1901, with hopes to continue the prosperity his leadership had brought the country. McKinley had overseen the victorious 1898 war against Spain, which expanded the U.S. territory with acquisitions like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. In September of that same year, McKinley set off on a Western tour that would end with a speech at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. Over 50,000 people came out to hear him speak, but the following day, on September 6, 1901, while McKinley was greeting the crowd and shaking hands, Leon Czolgosz, a 28-year-old anarchist, stepped forward and shot him twice in the chest and abdomen. Czolgosz had hidden the small handgun under a handkerchief as the president approached. McKinley, suffering from severe internal injuries, hung on for several days before dying in the early hours of September 14th. Leon Czolgosz was executed in the electric chair on October 29, 1901, for the crime. The assassination of Jesse James is one of those infamous moments in American history that still gets dramatized today, like in the 2007 film starring Brad Pitt, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Jesse James, born in 1847, wasn't your typical famous person. He started his journey as a teenager when he joined Confederate guerrillas during the Civil War. The war left deep scars on him, and after the South's defeat, James turned to robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches with his brother Frank. Coming up next is the betrayal that would end Jesse James' life. In 1879, James formed a gang with brothers Charlie and Rob Ford. The Ford brothers had their own plans, though, and secretly hated Jesse. They wanted the $10,000 reward that was promised by the governor of Missouri. The stage was set for one of the most famous assassinations in history. One day, Jesse invited the Fords to his house to plan a bank heist. As his mother made breakfast and Jesse turned his back to straighten a picture on the wall, Bob Ford pulled out his new model No. 3 .44 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver and shot Jesse James in the back of the head. James died instantly on April 3, 1882, at just 34 years old. Coming up next is a more modern yet equally shocking famous assassination, the murder of John Lennon on December 8, 1980. Lennon, the former Beatle-turned-solo artist, was shot by Mark David Chapman outside of his New York City apartment, the Dakota. Chapman, a 25-year-old obsessed fan, had previously asked Lennon for an autograph earlier that day. But later that evening, as Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono returned to their residence, Chapman waited for them. He raised his Charter Arms undercover .38 special revolver and shot Lennon multiple times, one of the bullets hitting his aorta. Lennon was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead within the hour. Coming up next is the chilling reason behind Chapman's actions. In court, Chapman stated that he killed Lennon because of his fame, explaining that he wanted to be someone like Lennon, but instead he would forever be known for his crime. Chapman was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. Despite his crime, he remains a figure that people still struggle to understand, and he has been denied parole 10 times since becoming eligible in 2000. These are just a few examples of famous assassinations that have shocked the world. From political figures to celebrities, the assassin's motives range from politics to obsession. These killings continue to have a lasting impact, leaving people to ask, what drives someone to take a life in such a cold and calculated manner? Let us know in the comments. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay up to date on what we are doing on this channel, be sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. By doing so, you'll stay in the loop with all our future updates.